Under the night's cloak of betrayal, it wasn't just a marriage that collapsed. It was an entire life built on trust, routine, and the belief in forever. He didn't realize right away who the woman beside him had become. Too bold, too confident, a stranger. When familiar touches vanish and are replaced by passwords, unfamiliar scents, and traces of someone else, what begins isn't suspicion, but realization. He didn't scream. He took action. A detective, photos, proof. But instead of one affair, he uncovered a web of lies. She had been living a separate life and believed she could walk away untouched. She was wrong. He didn't just tear down the house they built. He burned everything to the ground, coldly, precisely, without mercy. Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If you're here for the first time, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends or family. It really helps my channel a lot. Please tell me in which city or country you watched this video. I value every one of your comments. So, let's get started. Sleep eluded me again. It had become a grim tradition, me lying stiff on the bed, eyes locked on the ceiling, while faint streaks of streetlight filtered through the blinds like fading scars on a dark canvas. My thoughts spun, riddled with doubts I couldn't quiet. Avery lay beside me, breathing in calm, even intervals, her limbs draped haphazardly across the sheets. We'd shared 25 years together, yet that night, I felt like I was lying next to someone I no longer knew. Something felt off. This wasn't the slow drift caused by years of routine or the erosion that time brings to familiarity. No, this was abrupt, jarring, like she'd shed her skin and emerged as someone entirely different. The shift had started in our bedroom. Avery, once reserved and gently predictable, had always found comfort in routine. Her habits were soothing in their consistency, but without warning, that version of her vanished. She grew daring, her actions smooth, practiced even. The way she reached out to me, the sureness in her touch, the words she whispered when the lights were off, none of it resembled the woman I'd once known. It felt like an imposter had taken her place, someone who'd lived a life I hadn't been part of, someone harboring stories she'd never told. I remembered something a buddy once said over drinks. If your wife suddenly flips the switch in bed after 20 years of missionary Mondays, she's either been saved or she's screwing someone else. That thought played on repeat in my mind as I watched her sleep. I tried to dismiss it. Maybe it was just a phase, some late spark brought on by age or boredom. But then came the signs I couldn't ignore. A foreign scent clinging to her clothes, her wardrobe morphing into something tighter, bolder, brasher. Her phone, once forgotten on countertops, now rarely left her hand. She was always typing, always tilting the screen just enough to block my view. And then the passcode, something she'd never needed before. She'd never hidden a thing from me. Now it felt like she was locking me out. My chest felt squeezed, like something was crushing me from the inside. I needed the truth, and I wasn't going to stop until I had it. The next morning, we barely spoke. She stood by the stove, wearing a fitted blouse I didn't recognize, humming softly while pouring herself a cup of coffee. "Good morning?" she offered, eyes still glued to her phone. I replied with a grunt. She didn't look up, just kept scrolling, a subtle smirk playing at her lips, like she thought I was too blind to see it. My jaw clenched. That was the final straw. By lunchtime, I'd made up my mind. I reached out to a private investigator, Jonas Heller. He looked like someone pulled from a black and white detective reel, gray hair slicked back, eyes that had witnessed more betrayal than most could stomach. "So you suspect she's seeing someone else?" he asked, already scribbling into a notebook. "It's not suspicion," I said. "It's certainty." Jonas gave me a look that said he'd heard this all before. "Then let's get you proof." When I left his office, my stomach churned with dread. I didn't need photos to confirm what I already knew in my gut, but I still had to see it. 5 days later, the truth arrived sealed in a plain manila envelope. Jonas slid the folder across the table without saying much. "You might want to sit down for this." My hands shook as I undid the clasp, and there she was, Avery, standing in a hotel parking lot, smiling with a man I didn't recognize. They were too close, touching, intimate. I flipped to the next image. They were kissing, the kind of kiss that said this wasn't accidental, it wasn't a lapse in judgment, it was orchestrated, ongoing. A surge of heat rushed through me, rage and sorrow in equal measure. My fists clenched around the edge of the photos, heart hammering in my chest. "There's more," Jonas said quietly. I nodded, unable to form words, and turned the pages. More images. More men. It wasn't an affair. It was a double life. A part of her I'd never known. Avery had been living in shadows, and now the spotlight had found her. That night, I waited. She came in late, much too late. I sat at the dining room table, the photographs arranged in front of me like damning evidence at a trial. The moment she stepped inside and saw them, she stopped cold. Her face drained of color. "What? What is this?" she stammered, voice brittle. I tapped the stack once. "Why don't you explain it to me?" She opened her mouth, then closed it again. No excuse would do. I pushed back my chair, the scrape of wood on wood loud in the stillness. "How long, Avery?" I asked. Her eyes welled up. "Caleb, please! How long?" I roared, slamming my fist on the table. She flinched. The silence that followed was suffocating. I stared at her, the woman I had once built a life around, and I couldn't find a trace of her in that face. "You didn't just betray me," I said, voice low. "You destroyed everything we built." Then I turned my back and walked out. The divorce papers were filed the very next morning. But I wasn't done. Avery believed she'd covered her tracks. She thought the damage was confined. She had no idea what was coming next. She believed she could commit the worst kind of deceit and walk away untouched. But she underestimated me. I wasn't going to let her disappear without consequence. I was going to take everything, and then finish her. In the aftermath of handing Avery the divorce papers, an eerie calm settled over the house. No screaming, no hysterics. Just a cold, empty silence. She stared at the documents as if they were written in hieroglyphics. One evening, as we sat opposite each other at the dinner table, she murmured, "You're blowing this way out of proportion." "Ridiculous, Caleb," she added with a scoff. I almost laughed. "Ridiculous?" I leaned in, my voice ice cold. "Is that what you think this is?" "Avery, I've got the evidence. Photos, messages, 3 different guys. I know all about the Pure app. You've been living a double life, sneaking around while pretending to be the devoted spouse. Don't—" My hands clenched, my words trembling with rage. "Don't you dare act like I'm the one being ridiculous." She tightened her mouth into a line, arms crossed defiantly. "I was miserable," she said under her breath. "You stopped noticing me." A bitter laugh escaped me. "Oh, I notice you now, believe me, just not in the way you were hoping." Her eyes flickered, suddenly uncertain. She sensed I wasn't done, that something was coming, and that's exactly what I wanted. I wasn't ready to reveal my hand, not yet. I wanted her to simmer in that quiet, unnerving suspense. Let her mind wander to all the ways I could retaliate. What she didn't know was that her betrayal gave me every advantage. We lived in a state where cheating mattered, where judges weighed infidelity when deciding money, property, and custody. And thanks to my private investigator, I had every piece of damning evidence I needed. But I wasn't interested in fairness. I wanted vengeance, so I played it cool. For an entire week, I put on a show, composed, patient, seemingly forgiving. And Avery, so sure of her charm, fell for it. She thought I was softening, warming up to a reasonable deal. One night, she eased onto the couch next to me, syrup in her voice. "Caleb," she said sweetly, her hand resting gently on my knee. Maybe we don't need to fight this out. Maybe there's a better way. I gave her a thoughtful look. A compromise? I echoed. She lit up. Yes, there's no reason to make this messy. We can work it out, just us. I nearly laughed in her face. After months of sneaking around and humiliating me, she wanted to smooth things over like we were civil friends catching up over coffee. Classic Avery. She had no idea what was coming. While she thought she was leading me to some peaceful middle ground, I was baiting the hook. I was setting a trap she wouldn't see until it was too late. I met with my attorney, Nora, and spelled out exactly how we were going to dismantle Avery's future. Freeze all joint accounts, I told her. I don't want her touching a penny. Nora nodded. Good. What's next? I'm keeping the house, I said flatly. She can have the car and whatever random crap she wants, but the house stays with me. Nora smirked. Since she's the one who cheated, her legal footing's weak. Exactly. Avery thought she was manipulating me. In reality, she'd walked straight into a perfectly planned ambush, and the best was yet to come. Because Avery hadn't just cheated on me with strangers. One of her affairs, Daniel, was married, and I made it my mission to find his wife. Took some work, but eventually I tracked her down. Renee, kind, unsuspecting, had no idea her husband was shacking up with mine in sleazy motels. So I set up a meeting. We met in a quiet cafe downtown. She looked at me across the table, polite but confused. I'm sorry, but why did you want to meet? I slid a manila folder toward her. You deserve to know what your husband's been doing. She hesitated before taking it. Her hands trembled as she opened it and flipped through the contents. Photo after photo of Daniel and Avery, embracing outside bars, sharing drinks, caught in moments no wife should have to see. Her face went pale. No, she whispered. No, he wouldn't. He did, I said, sipping my coffee. That's why I'm ending my marriage. Her eyes filled with tears. She clutched the folder like it was the only thing keeping her upright. I need to leave, she stammered, getting up quickly. I need... Renee, I said softly but firmly. I've got a proposition for you, I said. She froze mid-step. I moved closer, letting the dim light carve sharp angles across my face. Do you want to destroy them? Renee faltered. Doubt flickered in her eyes at first. But as I laid it all out, every calculated point, every deliberate move, her uncertainty gave way to something else. Determination. By the time I finished, the tears had vanished. What remained in their place was resolve. No longer fragile or shaken, she was ready to strike. Together, we orchestrated a merciless pinpoint operation designed to bring Avery and Daniel to absolute ruin. It all started with the proof. We mailed unmarked envelopes, photos, chat logs, entire conversation threads, to Daniel's office, to Avery's family, to anyone remotely connected to them. In just a few days, Avery's pristine image shattered. The woman once admired became a pariah. Daniel's fate was worse. His wife tore him apart. She didn't just leave him, she gutted him. She filed for divorce, evicted him, and submitted every sordid detail to his employer, where marital fidelity wasn't a guideline, it was a contractual obligation. By Friday, Daniel had lost his wife, his job, and his reputation. Avery? She was left utterly alone, but I wasn't done yet. The night she realized just how far she had fallen, she showed up at my door. Her makeup ran in dark streaks down her cheeks, her eyes wide and terrified. "Caleb," she gasped, "please. I made a mistake." I folded my arms, looking at her like she was something rotting on the pavement. "A mistake?" I said, my tone ice cold. "Losing your wallet is a mistake. Forgetting to return a call. You didn't make a mistake, Avery. You made a choice, over and over again." She crumbled in front of me, sobbing uncontrollably. "I just want to fix things," she pleaded. I laughed, a harsh, guttural sound that cut through the night like a blade. "Fix this?" I stepped in close, towering over her. "You wrecked everything. You betrayed everything we had. You turned into the very thing you used to hate, a fraud, a traitor. And now you're begging for forgiveness?" She nodded, desperate, clinging to whatever sliver of hope she had left. I leaned forward, my voice a whisper, but sharp enough to pierce. "I want you to remember this moment for the rest of your life. You, on your knees, asking me for another chance." Then I stepped back, eyes hard as steel. "Because this is the last second you'll ever get from me." And I slammed the door shut. That sound, the finality of wood meeting frame, should have felt like the end. But it didn't. I stood just inside, breathing hard, fists balled tight, listening to her quiet sobs through the door. I thought watching her unravel would bring peace. A sense of justice. Relief. Instead, there was nothing but silence. A cold, echoing void. Maybe because deep inside I understood what she didn't. This wasn't closure. It was only the beginning of her descent. And I wasn't finished. I turned and walked into the darkened living room. The house felt alien now, larger, emptier, the same space where laughter once lived, where we raised our daughters and etched memories into the walls. Now it felt like a mausoleum. I poured myself a drink. The whiskey seared its way down like retribution in liquid form. My thoughts churned, rage, exhaustion, and a relentless, focused hatred. Avery hadn't paid enough. She'd detonated my entire world. Now I'd watch hers collapse into ashes. Image had always been Avery's currency. Elegance, poise, the illusion of perfection. She breathed validation like it was air. So what happens when that illusion is obliterated? When everyone sees her for who she truly is? I picked up the phone and called Renee, Daniel's now ex-wife. She answered instantly, her voice sharp and steady. "It's time," I said. No hesitation. "Let's finish what we started." That same night, the reckoning began. The files from the private investigator, the damning texts, the precise timeline, all uploaded anonymously. No names attached, just the truth laid bare. Affairs disguised as business meetings, hotel rooms booked under aliases, calendar entries cloaked in lies. By morning, whispers had started. By midday, the storm had broken. The women's group Avery had led for years exiled her. No one wanted proximity to a fraud. Her social circle disintegrated. Friends distanced themselves. Family withdrew. And then came the coup de grace. Her career. A photo surfaced. Her leaving a hotel with a business associate tied to her employer. Within 48 hours, HR called her in. By week's end, she was unemployed. No allies, no network, no grace left to save face. Just remorse and solitude. Even then, I wasn't done. One final thread remained. Jenna and Kelsey, our daughters, had unwittingly contributed to the betrayal. Thinking they were fostering openness, they encouraged Avery to explore a modern kind of relationship. They had no idea they were handing her the lighter fluid for the fire that would consume our family. They were trying to make things right now. I didn't know if I was capable of forgiving them yet, but I wasn't going to keep hiding. So when Jenna's name flashed across my phone again after another missed call, I finally picked up. "Dad?" Her voice was tentative, fragile. "Can we talk? Just the two of us. Without Mom." I exhaled slowly. "Okay. Where do you want to meet?" I asked. She mentioned a cafe. 20 minutes later, I stepped inside and saw them both already seated in a dim corner booth, looking like they hadn't slept in days. Kelsey's face was blotchy from crying. Jenna looked hollow. They wore guilt like a second skin. I took a seat across from them without a word. Jenna cleared her throat. "We're sorry, Dad. Really." Kelsey wiped at her face with a crumpled tissue. "This isn't how we wanted things to go." I folded my arms. "But you still played your part in making it happen." They flinched. I leaned forward, my voice low and cutting. Let me ask you this. When you and your mother started tossing around the idea of opening up the marriage, did it ever once cross your minds to ask me how I felt about it? To find out if I wanted that life? Jenna's face twisted with shame. Mom said, she made it seem like you didn't care anymore, like she was completely alone. My jaw clenched. And you believed that? Kelsey's voice wavered. We were foolish. We thought confronting the truth might push you two to fix things. We didn't mean to make it worse. I gave a short, bitter laugh. This was your plan to bring us closer? Jenna looked down. No. It turned into a disaster. We're both sick about it. Dragging a hand across my face, I felt the weight of everything. They were still my daughters. I didn't believe they'd acted out of cruelty, but that didn't change the damage they helped inflict. I stared at them for a long moment. I'm not ready to forgive you. Kelsey stifled a sob. But I stopped her. But I'm not cutting you off completely either. Jenna exhaled, shaky and uncertain. So, what now? You give me space, I said plainly. You stay out of my life from here on. Let me heal on my own terms. They nodded, eyes red and damp, and for the first time in what felt like ages, the fire in my chest dimmed just a little. It wasn't closure. It wasn't peace. But it was something. The beginning of something. Then came Avery. When I saw her again, she looked like a shell of her former self. Her hair, once pristine, was now a tangled mess. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by cheap, worn-out garments. She had lost everything. And the most ironic part? She finally realized it was all her doing. She appeared on my doorstep like a ghost, unmoving, too afraid to knock. When I opened the door, she just stood there, tears streaking silently down her face. Please, she murmured. I met her gaze. Please what? She looked broken. I don't know, she said, her voice barely audible. I want my life back. I tilted my head. You mean the life you wrecked? She began to tremble. The silence between us grew dense, filled with all the consequences she never imagined would catch up with her. Then I gave her the only response I had left. It's over. Her face collapsed, and I shut the door in her face. That was the end. But she didn't leave right away. She stayed just beyond the door, weeping quietly, hugging herself like her own arms could protect her from the fallout. I watched through the peephole. I didn't feel fury or sadness, not even relief. Just nothing. She'd made her choices, and now she had to live with them. I walked away from the door. Eventually, the sound of her crying softened, and I heard the slow, defeated shuffle of her feet descending the porch. When I checked again, she was gone. Truly gone. But she hadn't hit bottom yet, not completely. There was still one last thing she hadn't lost: the money. She'd been surviving on what little savings she had left, probably believing she could bounce back. What she hadn't realized was that I'd already pulled out every support beam beneath her. She was unemployed, and HR had made sure that no new doors would open. No job, no allies, just the fallout of her own making. Her social circle had disintegrated, and whatever reputation she once clung to was now in shambles. I made sure to conclude the divorce strictly on my own terms. She walked away with only what the court mandated. No assets, no financial support, and certainly no trace of the opulent life she once flaunted so proudly. The woman who once thought she was untouchable was now completely powerless. She tried reaching out to a few of her former affairs, but unsurprisingly, not one of them responded. Daniel disappeared completely. Logan cut her off without a word. And that clown who used to go by Nacho's Man, he didn't even remember her name. Whatever spell she once cast had long since worn off. She was no longer the fantasy she'd pretended to be, just a discarded shadow of who she thought she was. Then came the cruelest blow. A mutual acquaintance told me Avery had moved into a dilapidated apartment near the city limits. From luxury high-rises to a crumbling one-bedroom with peeling paint and broken blinds. The irony? It was the very same seedy motel where she once carried out her betrayals. That place was now her home. I hadn't spoken to Jenna or Kelsey, not because my love for them had faded, but because I hadn't been ready to forgive. Then, one night, Kelsey appeared at my doorstep alone. She stood on the porch, pale and hesitant, holding a small envelope tightly in her hands. I paused at the door before stepping outside. "What are you doing here?" I asked. She hesitated, then said, "Dad, I need to talk to you." I crossed my arms. "I'm listening." Her voice shook. I want to see Mom." My muscles tightened. Her eyes dropped. "She's not okay." I let out a dry, bitter laugh. "That's not my problem anymore." Pain flickered in her expression. I know this is all her fault. But seeing her like that, it made something click for me. "We all had a hand in this," she whispered. I stayed silent. Then she held the envelope out toward me. "It's a letter, from me and Jenna. We didn't trust ourselves to say it right, so we wrote it instead." I hesitated before finally taking it. Kelsey pressed her lips together, barely audible now. "We miss you, Dad." Before I could reply, she turned and walked away. I stood there long after the door had closed behind her, the envelope still in my hand. Eventually, I opened it. Every word inside was soaked with sorrow, regret, and a desperate yearning. As I read, the bitterness I'd carried for so long began to crack. Time passed. I slowly began rebuilding. I returned to work, reconnected with old friends. Brick by brick, I started to reconstruct the life Avery had tried to destroy. And then one afternoon, a final message came through, from an unlisted number. "Avery, I know you'll never forgive me, but I need to say this. I'm sorry. I destroyed everything, and I deserve where I ended up. I just hope you find peace someday." I stared at the message for a long time. I could have answered. I could have poured every ounce of rage into one final response. But instead, I did the only thing that felt right. I deleted it. Then, with a deep breath, I turned away from it all. And for the first time in years, I felt something lift. Avery was gone from my life. The betrayal, the grief, the weight of it all. It had finally lost its grip on me. And my daughters were coming back to me, slowly but surely. It wasn't perfect, but healing had begun. That evening, standing alone on the back porch as the sun cast warm streaks across the sky, I let the breath escape my lungs. Because for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt free. Avery had fallen, and I had finally risen. This story has come to an end. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you like this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you. He thought he knew his life down to the last detail. A stable job, a cozy home, 2 children with his wife's eyes, and a habit of curling up next to him before bed. But everything began to unravel the moment he spotted a shiny scrap of foil on the bathroom floor. A small detail, nearly invisible, yet it opened the door to an abyss. No shouting, no drama, just a cold suspicion growing like ice in his chest. Every step forward pulled him further from peace and closer to revelations he could no longer ignore. Hidden cameras, secret phones, tests that couldn't be dismissed. When the truth finally came to light, it didn't just destroy his marriage. It shattered the very foundation of his fatherhood. Who were they now? The children he had raised with love. Who was she? The woman he had once called family. And how do you rebuild something that may have been built on lies from the very start? The answers are here. Shocking, painful, but undeniably real. Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If it's your first time here, don't forget to subscribe and like this video, as every like truly inspires me. Please tell me which city and country you watched this video from. Now, let's get started. I always pictured life-changing moments as loud, dramatic, and impossible to miss. Something out of a movie, full of shouting or high-stakes chaos. But when everything began to unravel for me, it started in the quietest, most mundane way. A tiny scrap of foil on the bathroom floor. It shimmered faintly in the early sunlight slicing through the blinds, just enough to catch my eye as I stepped in. The overhead light was still off, and the beam of sun highlighted the foil like a spotlight on a stage. I froze for a second, careful not to step on anything sharp. Vivian hadn't mentioned losing anything, though it wouldn't be the first time something random ended up out of place. I bent down to get a closer look. It was a small, circular foil disc, no bigger than the nail on my pinky. There was something familiar about it, the kind of familiarity that gnaws at the edge of memory. It resembled the foil left behind after pressing a pill through a blister pack. One side was blank. The other was stamped with a simple number. 2. That gave me pause. It was Wednesday. A foil marked 2 likely came from Tuesday's dose. I wasn't taking any medication regularly. At 35, I was healthy, maybe took the occasional ibuprofen, but nothing daily. As far as I knew, Vivian wasn't on any daily meds either. We'd both had our annual checkups recently, both declared fit. So what was a piece of a Tuesday pill pack doing on our bathroom floor? I tried to dismiss it. Maybe it came from a supplement or something of the kids, like their chewable vitamins. But something about it didn't sit right. That quiet, creeping discomfort in my gut wouldn't leave. Years ago, the only consistent medication in the house had been Vivian's birth control, until we decided we were done having kids and I got a vasectomy. She'd stayed on the pill for years, but after my procedure, there hadn't been a reason for her to continue. Or so I thought. Now I was holding something that suggested she hadn't stopped. The realization hit like cold water. If she was still taking the pill, that left 2 unsettling possibilities. Either she didn't believe my vasectomy worked, or she had a different reason altogether for avoiding pregnancy. Ordinarily, I might have just asked her. But something told me not to. Maybe it was the years I'd spent as an engineer, trained to test and verify before drawing conclusions. I needed more than a hunch. So I carefully placed the foil back where I found it, reset the room like nothing had happened, and drove to work with my mind racing. That day, I ignored the mountain of paperwork waiting on my desk. Instead, I opened my laptop and began researching private DNA tests and covert surveillance equipment. I hated that my thoughts had shifted so quickly toward mistrust, but I couldn't pretend this wasn't happening. If there was even a remote possibility Vivian had been unfaithful, if there was even a sliver of doubt about Jasper and Scarlett being mine. Jasper was 5, Scarlett 3. I had never questioned that they were my children. But if Vivian had kept something as significant as continuing the pill a secret, what else could she be hiding? I ordered a variety of gear, discreet voice recorders, miniature hidden cameras, phone cloning tools, and at-home DNA kits. The whole process made me feel physically sick, like I was betraying my own sense of morality. But I needed answers, and I wasn't about to confront her without proof. Waiting for the packages to arrive felt like the longest stretch of my life. In the meantime, I watched Vivian more closely. Her patterns, her behavior, her tone. But nothing seemed out of the ordinary. She moved through her days the same way she always had. No sudden changes to her schedule. No suspicious absences. We were still intimate, maybe once or twice a week, usually early mornings before the kids woke up. She hadn't changed her perfume. She didn't come home smelling like someone else. She wasn't acting distant or overly affectionate. If she was hiding something, she was doing it flawlessly. On Friday, I got the call. The equipment had arrived. I had it all delivered to my office to avoid raising any flags. That afternoon, I told Vivian I had a light workload and left early. When I got home, the au pair was busy feeding the kids, which gave me the chance I needed to install the surveillance gear. I placed the cameras in high-traffic areas, the bathroom, bedroom, and living room. If there was something to catch, I wanted the best odds of capturing it. The bathroom camera was critical. If she really was taking a daily pill, that's where I'd see it. That night, after we tucked the kids into bed, I carefully swabbed their cheeks for the DNA tests. I did mine too. To them, it was just a silly little game with Daddy and some cotton swabs. I sealed the samples, labeled them, and sent them off. According to the lab, I'd have the results 2 days after they received everything. That night unfolded like any other. Vivian returned home on time. We talked about our days, shared a few laughs, debated what show to watch. I smiled when I needed to, acted normal, but inside, I felt completely disconnected, like I was watching someone else live my life. While she showered, I slipped out to her car and placed a voice recorder under the driver's seat. I also cloned her phone during a window of access, copying her texts, call logs, and emails. I scrolled through them, half expecting something incriminating to leap off the screen. But there was nothing. No flirty messages, no unfamiliar numbers, no strange late-night activity. Either she was innocent or she was being incredibly careful. The weekend passed without incident. We followed our usual routine, running errands, taking the kids to the park, doing household chores. We once had intimacy, perhaps more out of habit than desire. I kept up appearances, but deep down I was barely holding back. Monday morning, I told her I'd be working from home. As soon as she left, I collected the memory cards from the cameras and uploaded the footage to my laptop. And there it was, undeniable, caught on camera every single morning. Vivian, taking a small white pill. The truth hit like a gut punch. She had resumed taking birth control. I barely had time to process it before forcing myself to press on. The next clue was hidden in the footage from the bedroom camera. Saturday night, while I was in the kitchen prepping dinner, she emerged from the shower, walked straight into the bedroom, and typed something into a phone I didn't recognize. It wasn't the device I had synced. She had another phone, one I'd never known about. I stared at the screen as she gently tucked it inside the air conditioning vent. Suddenly, the pieces clicked together. Her main phone had been spotless because it wasn't her actual phone. Naturally, she'd keep a second phone hidden from me. I had to know what was on it. That same night, once she was asleep, I quietly accessed the vent from Scarlett's room, but it wasn't there. She must have moved it, maybe back into her purse or some new hiding spot. I waited. A few days later, another window opened. Vivian was in the shower, the sound of water loud enough to cover my movements. I quietly opened the vent again. This time, the phone was inside. I snatched it, hurried to my office, and began cloning the data to a spare device. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. The adrenaline made every breath shallow and tight. Just as I wrapped up, the water stopped running. I had seconds. I slipped back into Scarlett's room, settled in beside her like I'd been sitting there all along. Vivian peeked through the door, eyeing me curiously. I stayed cool, just a dad checking on his daughter. She moved on without a word. The following morning, in the silence of my office, I opened the copy of the phone's data. It didn't take long before my eyes filled with tears. Everything I had dreaded was true. The messages were explicit, vivid accounts of hotel hookups and sexual encounters between Vivian and another man. They joked about how clueless I was, planned their meetings around my work trips. No name was ever mentioned, which only confirmed the worst. It was someone close, someone whose identity she couldn't risk putting in writing. I broke down at my desk, sobbing uncontrollably, oblivious to Monica's voice over the intercom. Eventually, she stepped into the room, found me doubled over in tears, and quietly shut the door behind her. Monica, sharp, poised, a few years older than me, had always maintained a strictly professional relationship. But in that moment, she crossed the line. She walked in, locked the door, and handed me a box of tissues. "What's going on?" she asked, her tone gentle but steady. I poured it all out: the mystery pills, the strange packaging, the surveillance, the secret phone. I felt like a shattered man, barely holding it together. But Monica didn't flinch. "Okay," she said firmly. "We need facts and a plan." I told her I'd ordered DNA tests for the kids too. She nodded approvingly. "Smart move. First, you get the truth. Then you act. But for now, there's something else. Portland office needs you. You're flying out today. Back Thursday." I frowned. "Wait, what? I didn't schedule that." She was already typing. "Just go with it. Being around too much might tip her off. Say it's an emergency at the branch." She crafted the message on my phone and sent it to Vivian herself. Vivian replied quickly, full of concern, hoping everything was okay and that I'd be home soon. Monica then handed me a contact: Lorraine, a divorce attorney who had guided her through her own painful separation. That same day, still emotionally numb, I found myself sitting in Lorraine's office. Lorraine listened carefully. Her questions were sharp, efficient. She walked me through my legal options. I had 3 paths: stay silent and do nothing, file for a peaceful, mutual separation, or go full force with a legal case for adultery that would leave Vivian with virtually nothing. Doing nothing wasn't an option. I was seething. A friendly split? Why should I hand over half my life's work, especially if the kids turned out not to be mine? My decision came easily. "I want to go scorched earth," I told her, voice trembling with anger. She nodded. "Then we build a case. Give me the phone." Without hesitation, I handed it over. Monica picked me up afterward and drove me to a modest hotel. She made me swear I'd shower, order a proper meal, and avoid the minibar. "I need your head clear," she said. "This is just the beginning. You need to stay sharp." But sharpness eluded me. My world had just imploded. The only thing keeping me upright was a fragile thread of hope that the kids were mine, or that somehow I'd been wrong. Deep down, though, I already knew. The next morning, I got a message from the lab. The DNA results would be ready by the afternoon. I couldn't bring myself to check. Monica noticed and gently took the phone, glanced at the screen. "Not posted yet," she said, handing it back softly. "We'll check again soon." In the meantime, we had bigger concerns, like safeguarding my business. Monica reminded me that our engineering firm wasn't just mine. Over 100 employees and their families depended on it. If Vivian walked away with too much, everything could unravel. That snapped me out of the fog. I had to force myself into the mindset of an engineer, logical, calculated, focused on breaking things down step by step. My first action was to meet with Brian Spencer, my longtime corporate attorney. He reminded me that I had a prenuptial agreement in place. At our firm, every partner was required to sign one before tying the knot, a legal precaution designed to insulate the business from any marital fallout. The prenup meant Vivian had no claim to the company. She could only pursue my individual income and personal assets: the house, the savings, the retirement account. Brian got straight to the point. "Here's what I suggest," he said. "Buy out Robert. He's been dropping hints he's ready to walk away. Sink every available dollar into the company, even if you have to take on debt. That'll put your money behind a legal barrier." It was a bold maneuver, but letting her take half wasn't on the table. I called Robert. His question was immediate. "Why now?" I didn't hold back. "Vivian's been cheating, maybe since day one." There was a moment of silence. Then he offered his sympathy and agreed to sell most of his shares, keeping just 5% so he could remain as a consultant. We got the ball rolling on the paperwork. Later that afternoon, I had lunch with Monica, and we checked the DNA results again. This time, they were posted. She looked first. Her expression collapsed. "I'm sorry, Grant." My fingers were unsteady as I took her phone. The verdict was undeniable. Both children shared the same biological father, And it wasn't me. The boy and girl I had cherished, celebrated, and raised weren't mine. The weight of that truth hit me like a freight train. Monica's voice cut through the mental chaos. You need to stay focused. She'll come for everything if you don't. She helped me out of the restaurant and into Lorraine's office. Lorraine had news waiting. The investigator has a preliminary report, she said. Vivian had a man over at your house last night. He had a key, let himself in. We couldn't see inside, but he was definitely expected. Nausea twisted in my gut. Later, I reviewed the security footage from the living room camera. There he was, walking in like he belonged, and being welcomed by our son. Correction, her son. The boy ran up to him and shouted, "Daddy Brandon!" Tears came hard and fast, and in that instant, the whole story clicked into place. The man was Brandon Whitmore, Vivian's boss. Their relationship hadn't been a recent betrayal. It had likely lasted the entire span of our marriage. Lorraine ran a background check. Brandon was a senior executive at her company, and the firm had a strict no fraternization policy. We can sue, Lorraine said, for negligence and failure to enforce their conduct rules. And we go after Brandon for alienation of affection, and Vivian for paternity fraud. She launched into an aggressive legal strategy. She was fully in, no hesitation. I'd chosen to go scorched earth, and she was ready to go with me. Back at the hotel, I sat in a numb silence. That evening, Monica showed up at the door. "You shouldn't be alone," she said. "Pack a bag. You're staying at my place." I didn't argue. I didn't have the energy. Her house was a calm, open space. She gave me a private room. There was no pressure, no questions. Just the quiet presence of someone who knew I was barely holding on. The next step was closing the buyout with Robert. Every dollar of personal wealth had to be redirected into the company, restructuring everything to show me as nearly penniless on paper. I liquidated my savings, cashed out my retirement, penalties and all, and started refinancing the house. By the end, my financial footprint would be lean, protected, and legally defensible. Because of the prenup, and because all of this happened before the divorce was filed, it was airtight. Brian handled the contracts. Robert signed. I became the majority shareholder. Almost everything I owned was now shielded under the company's name, and untouchable. Monday morning, Lorraine filed the divorce petition. Grounds: infidelity, deception, and emotional harm. Simultaneously, she filed suit against Brandon's employer for corporate misconduct. Process servers were already dispatched, one to Brandon's office, another to HR, and the last to Vivian directly. I watched the clock. At exactly 10:01 a.m., my phone buzzed. Vivian had officially been served. Moments later, the lawsuits hit. Then my phone rang again, but it wasn't her. It was my mother. "Grant," she said, voice tense. "What is this?" "Hey, Mom. We got your letter. Your father saw it too. Are you really doing this?" "Did you read it?" I asked. "I did," she replied quietly, "but I can't accept it. She's your wife, and those children, they're your children." "No," I said. "They're not mine." There was a pause. Then, gently, "In every way that matters, they are." "No," I said again. "Not anymore. You were the one who brought them up. From the instant they came into the world, you were their father. Doesn't that count for something? It means everything." But it was all founded on a lie. Her breathing grew heavier over the phone line. "So that's it? You're just walking away like none of it mattered? You're abandoning them because of what Vivian did? You really believe they won't be crushed when you suddenly decide you're no longer their dad?" "What do you even mean by that?" I shouted. "I can't lose my grandchildren over this." "You won't," she replied calmly. "Then don't let it come to that," I told her. "That's not my choice to make. I have to go." "Grant." I ended the call. The phone lit up again almost immediately. It was Vivian. "Grant, we need to talk," she said, her voice trembling. "I'm coming back to the house." I said nothing, just hung up. That word, house, it still hit hard. She called it home. Technically, it still was. We'd built that life together. Monica gave me a quick, tight hug on her way out, leaving me to face Vivian alone. I waited in the study, sifting through a flood of emails from relatives who had received the packet of documents. My dad was furious. My sister, too. Around 20 minutes later, Vivian barged in, slamming the door shut behind her. She looked wrecked, hair unbrushed, panic in her eyes. "Grant, please," she started. "I'm not interested," I cut her off. "But," I said, "no. You won't even hear, no." My voice was flat. "You deceived me for nearly 10 years. Those kids, neither one shares a drop of my blood. And on top of it all, you convinced me to get a vasectomy while secretly staying on birth control, just so you could keep sleeping with dear old Daddy Brandon." Her face went pale, shocked. "So no, Vivian," I said, voice hard. "I don't want to hear a damn word. You got served. My lawyer's details are in the envelope. Direct any concerns to her." "And the kids?" she asked softly. "What kids?" I snapped. "I don't have any children. And thanks to you, I probably never will. I could ask why you would do this to me. But I already know whatever you say will be another lie. I don't want justifications. I don't need your excuses. I want this nightmare over so I can start picking up the pieces of whatever life I have left." I called out for the au pair. The door was open. She was only a few feet away in the next room. "You're dismissed," I said flatly. "Effective immediately. Start packing." "What?" she gasped. "Why?" "Because you helped cover it all up," I said, motioning toward Vivian. "You knew she was screwing her boss. Maybe you didn't know the truth about the kids, but you were definitely aware something was going on. I've got footage of you chatting about it with Brandon." "Get out." "Grant," Vivian interjected. "You can't just fire her. I'm the one who signs her checks." The au pair looked at her with a strange blend of gratitude and dread. "Well," I said, "I already contacted the agency, told them about your little affair. They agreed to keep things quiet if I dropped the complaint, and they dropped her. So if you still want her around, Vivian, you'll need to pay her yourself. That includes taxes, vacation time, benefits, everything." The au pair's face went ghost white. This wasn't just a firing. It was career-ending. Agencies shared this kind of dirt. "Out," I said again. No further explanation needed. She grabbed her things and fled. "Was that really necessary?" Vivian asked. "She didn't—" "You're still talking," I snapped. "I told you I didn't want to hear it. What I do want is for you to take your stuff, take your kids, and get the hell out of my house." "This is my home too," she hissed. "Not legally," I replied, my voice cold. "The deed's in my name. Until a judge says different, this place is mine." She flinched as I raised my voice. Just then, Jasper entered the room. "Mommy," he said. Scarlett fell down. Tears in her eyes, Vivian got up and rushed out to help her daughter. I shut the office door behind her and didn't move. I sat there in silence. A few minutes later, she came back, carrying Scarlett in her arms. "You're really not going to say goodbye to—" "Don't," I warned her. She's not my daughter. He's not my son. Take them to the man who actually fathered them. Let Brandon deal with the consequences of his choices. They're not mine anymore." "Grant, please. Leave." The door closed behind them, and the second it did, I completely fell apart. Not long after, Monica stepped inside quietly. She had lingered nearby, expecting I might fall apart once I was alone. When I did, she was there, wrapping her arms around me in a way that somehow steadied me. We both listened as the car's engine faded into silence. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing, but I ignored every call. For the first time in a long while, I had an overwhelming urge to vanish from my own life. Ever composed and unwavering, Monica gently pulled me back to reality. There was still work to do, HR reports to finish, financial matters to lock down, and the beginnings of legal action to set in motion. Hours later, an email popped up in my inbox. Vivian had filed for a restraining order, claiming emotional trauma. It barred me from entering my own home until a judge could weigh in. It was a strategic maneuver, no doubt crafted by her lawyer to paint her as the injured party. But Lorraine acted swiftly, presenting the court with the surveillance footage I had installed, the evidence I had gathered, and the violations I had exposed. The judge dismissed the order soon after. Vivian went to stay with her parents. Brandon, on the other hand, was fired. His employer had confirmed he had blatantly violated the company's strict non-fraternization rules by engaging in a relationship with a subordinate, one that had resulted in 2 children. Legal battles broke out on all sides. Eventually, Brandon's former employer agreed to a substantial settlement in my favor. On top of that, under our state's alienation of affection statute, Brandon was ordered to pay damages himself, a payout that allowed me to repay the pension loan I'd taken to survive. But none of it really registered. What devastated me most was the loss of Jasper and Scarlett. I still loved them deeply, but I couldn't bring myself to see them. The hurt was too fresh, too deep. Maybe it made me a coward, but every time I imagined their faces, all I could see was his. I figured they'd eventually forget me anyway. Vivian tried to use them to keep me tied to her life, pleading with me to remain in contact, for their sake. I couldn't. Not yet. Weeks slipped by, and before long, a month had passed. I sold the house, took a financial hit. But it didn't matter. That place had become a shrine to deception. I moved into Monica's spare bedroom for a while. We kept things cordial, respectful, though something between us had undeniably changed. At work, she remained the professional everyone knew. At home, she was quietly watchful, always there, always checking in without saying much. The divorce became official on a Tuesday. I was sitting at my desk when the envelope arrived. I opened it, scanned the decree, and just like that, I wasn't married to Vivian anymore. A wave of emotion rolled over me, part grief, part relief. My phone rang. I picked up. Monica's voice came through, calm and measured. Brandon Whitmore is dead. His wife caught him with Vivian again. She shot him. I sat frozen. The bitter irony hit me like a slap. He'd never get the chance to raise the children he'd fathered behind my back. I wasn't sure if it was karmic justice or simply another senseless tragedy. But I didn't feel sorry for him. Not even a little. Well, I said quietly. He had it coming. I braced for a rebuke from Monica, but it never came. She gave a small nod instead. A moment later, she stepped into my office with another envelope in hand. "This came for you too," she said. "Looks like the final payment from Brandon's settlement." I opened it. The check inside was more than enough to wipe out the loan completely. Just like that, the financial burden disappeared. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling deeply, overwhelmed by everything yet emotionally blank. My marriage had ended. The children I thought were mine were gone. Brandon was dead, and in some strange, twisted way, I was free. Monica quietly closed the door behind her, walked over to me, and kissed me, long and deep, with no hesitation. When she pulled back, my pulse was racing for a reason that had nothing to do with grief. She smiled, clearly sensing my shock. "I've been taking care of you for 9 years," she said softly. "You're the kindest man I've ever known. Even in your worst moments, you never crossed a line. I've been waiting, Grant. If you're ready, I want to show you that not every woman lies. Not every love ends in heartbreak." I sat there, stunned, turning over every shared moment in my mind. Her unwavering calm, her fierce loyalty, how hard she fought for me when it all came crashing down. Maybe I had been blind, so wrapped up in a broken marriage that I never saw the one person who truly had my back. I remembered what Dr. Harrington had said about reversing a vasectomy, that there was hope. A flicker of possibility stirred in my chest. Still caught in the haze of that kiss, I looked into Monica's eyes and, with a rough laugh, asked, "So, how many kids are we thinking?" She broke into a warm, radiant smile. "At least 2, she said, "but let's start slow." And right then, something shifted inside me. Everything had been turned on its head, but a new path was unfolding. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in ages, I didn't feel suffocated. I had found peace, in court, within myself, and in the truth. I would always grieve for the children I lost. But now, I also had the chance to begin again. Maybe this time, I'd build something real, with someone who never stopped standing by my side. I gave a slow nod, and Monica kissed me again. That was the moment my past finally released me, and my future began. The lies were behind me. The betrayal buried. Maybe heartbreak was the price of my freedom, and maybe, in the end, it was worth it. This story has come to an end. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you like this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you